Introducing Ivotion Digital Dentures from Ivoclar. Experience unparalleled precision and efficiency with Ivoclar's state-of-the-art digital denture workflow.
Ivotion is available in their patent-pending monolithic disc that combines denture base and tooth materials in one seamless puck.
Ivotion is also available as standalone discs, Ivotion base, dent, and dent multi, that all in a 98mm width to fit your favorite milling machine.
With Ivotion, you can streamline your lab's processes, reduce production time, and enhance your patient satisfaction.
These things look amazing. Elevate your lab's capabilities with Ivotion Digital Denture, where innovation meets perfection. Discover the future of dentures today with Ivoclar. And as always, we thank you for your continued support of the podcast. Welcome to Voices from the Bench, a dental laboratory podcast. Send us an email at info@voicesfromthebench.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Greetings and welcome to episode 336 of Voices from the Bench. My name is Elvis, who's in Indiana.
And my name is Barbara, who's in Oregon.
Oregon? The hell you doing in Oregon?
Dude, I am in God's country. I am staring at Hood Canal right now. It's like 55 degrees. Sun's just coming up super early. And I'm on vacation. Woo!
What is
so happy.
Hood Canal?
It is like right in the middle of between Oregon and Washington. Yesterday at 5 a.m., I took my sons, they're not children, sturgeon/salmon fishing, and we caught a 22-pound Alaskan king salmon. So I have salmon for the whole trip, and then 2 giant sturgeons after that. Oh my God, it was so great.
You caught a 22-pound salmon?
Yes. And you know what's funny? First time I've ever been fishing, and every single bite, and we only had 4, we caught 1. Every single bite was on my line. I think the fish knew.
Insane. 22-pound salmon?
Yes. It's pretty awesome.
That's like 3 times the weight of all my dogs put together. That's huge.
I know. I'll send you a picture of it. And now I have wild salmon for the whole rest of the trip because we're staying in Airbnbs from here on out so we can cook.
And you're going to travel the salmon in your trunk?
Yeah, we bought a cooler because we knew we were going to catch one. And so we've got it all cut up and filleted, and then we're going to cook it tonight and tomorrow. And then whatever we don't eat, I'm leaving with my brother.
And you're going to be cooking it for the rest of the year. That's a lot of fish.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's exciting.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm not on vacation, working, but we do have Labor Day when this episode airs, so long weekend at least. So I'm excited for that.
You still sound a little sniffly.
Yeah, I got this lingering kind of stuffiness that I just can't get over, but I'll get it. I'm running again, so
good.
It really doesn't bother me.
Good. All right, so let's do this.
So yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
All right.
Because even though we released these before last week's episode...
Oh my God, they're so popular.
We put together some new shirts that didn't come out until after we recorded. So if you're on our social media, this is kind of old news to you. But for those that only listen to the podcast, this is pretty cool.
It's so cool.
So just like everything else in my life, I'm strolling on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. And I came across a story by a technician named Brittany Mitchell. She had on this hilarious shirt that had a denture on it. And I shot her a message about where she got it. And it turns out that she actually made it herself. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Do you mind if I, quote-unquote, steal this for the podcast shirt? And of course she agreed, as long as we used a picture of a denture of hers.
Of course.
Of course, yeah. And I'm happy to because she does great work. And it's a great shirt that says, just say no to brushing, along with a beautiful picture of a denture that she made.
Hold on. I hope people get that. So, like, if you don't brush, you lose your teeth, then you get a denture, right? That's the whole thing.
Yes.
Non-dental people.
Yeah, we understand there's other reasons people lose their teeth, yada, yada, yada. But this is just, for fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we couldn't just do a shirt for removable technicians. That wouldn't be fair.
Right
You know,
on.
what about all the fixed people? So we're going to show you some love. And I've always had this idea for a shirt in the back of my head about not pulling out teeth, but restoring them. And I could never really get it to work. Well, Barb, we had a conversation with Charlie Barber, who does dental art at CIMB Designs. Now look for his episode coming out, I think next week.
Yeah.
But he did some great art of implants and abutments, and he agreed to let us use some of his art for our fixed shirt that says, don't pull out, but if you do, put an implant in it.
Every single implant technician in my lab is getting one of those shirts. I have asked everybody and they're all in. That is so great.
I thought it was hilarious.
It is.
And it's so niche to our industry. I love it.
I know. I just love the don't pull out. That's so great.
It's risky. At the same time, it's hilarious. So
it's awesome.
So we have these two shirts on sale until September 14th.
Yeah, and don't be one of those people.
Yep.
People that say, "Oh, when, are the shirts still on sale?" No. September 14th, last day.
Last day. So the best way to find the link, that is if you don't follow us on social media, is just go to voicesfromthebench.com/shirts. And then you'll see a link to both of them. So a few things to note. If you want to get both, the removable one and the fixed one, I had to create two campaigns. But if you put one in your cart and then go back and click the other link, they will combine so you can put both of them in one shipping.
Nice.
That's cool. The other thing is this is different for us, which is we put the saying and the slogans on the front of the shirt this time. And we put the podcast logo on the back.
We're on the back.
Yeah, a little
That's
different.
cool.
I wanted to mix it up.
Oh, yeah.
We like
I
these
love
things so much, we wanted to put them on the front. And yes, 100%, these do ship internationally. So if you don't listen to us here in America or in Canada, feel free to order a shirt. So please get these hilarious and slightly risky shirts. And always remember that 100% of the profits go towards the Foundation for Dental Laboratory Technology.
So speaking of the foundation, we are less than 2 weeks away from the race from the future.
I can't believe we're less than 2 weeks.
I know. So crazy. Oh, and by the way, we're less than a week from my birthday because I celebrate my birthday all month.
Yep.
But that's beside the point. You guys all know what to do. Head over to dentallabfoundation.org and click the Donate Now button and put either myself or Team Abutments in the racer area so you can support us as we race in Fort Worth, Texas on September 15th. And remember, again, all money goes to the Foundation for Dental Laboratory Technology that provides amazing opportunities to amazing people in our amazing industry. That's a threefer. Amazing.
It's a lot of amazing.
Yeah. You know it. And I just want to give the Abutments a shout out. You guys are really doing great. I see you all over social media. I know you're over $3,000. I'm super proud of you. There was a day that I used to work super hard to try to get a lot of money. And this year I just tried a little bit, but congratulations to you guys. I'm really proud of you. It's so important to raise money and race. So well done, guys.
We know that for 8+ years, you went all out and you got the most donations, and you and Sean together did some great things for 8 years, but it's time to pass the torch, and the Team Abutments are happy to carry this torch.
And you know what? I really agree with that. I do. I agree that there's always somebody else to take the torch. So well done, y'all.
Awesome. We're happy to do it. So, there's staples in our industry, Barb, that we always kind of wonder why it takes so long to have them on a podcast for a full hour. And even when we try to record, life gets in the way.
Yeah, like 4 times.
But it finally happened, and we had a great conversation with Jamie Stover from Carbon.
Good dude right there.
Jamie comes on the podcast to talk about when he started back in the lab in 1998 after a recommendation from his older brother who's a dentist. He talks about learning all the steps in the lab and then becoming a manager of the lab. And after getting a few carbon printers in that lab, he knew he needed to work with that company. Now, while he loves the technology and how great the printers are, his main focus is being a resource for labs that have gotten that printer. And not just a resource for the printer, but a resource for anything dental lab related. And on top of all that, Jamie's also the current chair of the NBC, and we get a nice update on what it means to him for people to get a higher degree of recognition in our industry. So join us as we chat with Jamie Stover. Voices from the Bench. The interview. Barb and I are super excited to finally, after about 14 reschedules, to finally have the Jamie Stover on the podcast. How are you, sir?
Jamie Stover.
What is it?
Whatever you want to call me, I'm good with it.
Oh my God, Elvis.
Is it Stover?
Say that again.
Yeah.
Do that again.
Yeah, see?
Oh my God, I did put the R before the O.
That's what she said.
Jamie Stover, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you, sir. I'm doing really, really well. It's so good to be here with you guys. Yeah, the listeners would probably think it's kind of funny if they realized the challenges, I'll say, that we faced trying to get this recording to happen, right? We rescheduled it 4 times, 3 times, something.
I think so.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone is to blame. There's not one of us that rescheduled more. It's just like we all had something going on. It's just a busy time for all of us, I guess.
It is.
Can't complain, though.
Nope.
No.
So, Jamie, you joined us, I think, at our first lab day, or maybe our second Lab Day Chicago. You were on the podcast. You just started with Carbon.
Yeah, that was like six years ago, probably 5-6 years ago.
Yeah. Your memory serves you correctly. Let's see, it was March of 2019, February 2019 at that LMT Chicago. Came by, I was walking through heading down to the exhibit hall and came by, saw you guys at the booth there, and I think you grabbed me, or maybe I somehow corralled you, into
I probably grabbed you. Chances are good.
I was like fresh like a baby at Carbon. Then I had literally, so that was when I officially joined Carbon, and my start date, my official legal HR start date was not till March 1st of 2019. So I think my head was spinning. I literally had just that morning shook hands with Phil and kind of inked the deal. And I think he said something like, because I had been a Carbon customer.
Sure, you already had the shoes, right?
I had the shoes and I
but not the jacket.
Right. And so it was great to do that with you guys. But we have more history than that, the three of us. I mean,
absolutely. The first time we met, 2015. NADL University. Yeah,
alumni.
And you were with a lab at that time.
I was. Yep. That was the lab that I was at prior to joining Carbon. And I had heard about NADLU and I'd heard such good feedback about it. And I was really, right then, I was just in my wheelhouse of, trying to really run the business as efficiently as possible. And I was just like a sponge, just soaking up anything that I could from anybody that I could. And I remember meeting you guys there. We have a pretty esteemed class, that class.
We did. I mean, it was the elite of the elite, and I was happy to be a part of it.
We probably shouldn't incriminate anybody or name names, right? But I do have a short list of names that were in that with us, but we probably don't want to call them out.
No, but we do need to note that most of them I'm still friends with and still communicate with on a semi-regular basis.
That's cool.
That's how tight you get when you go to NADL University.
100%. Yeah.
Definitely a bonding experience for sure.
All right. So enough about how we know each other. Yeah. Let's talk about you, Jamie. Where did you start to get into the lab industry?
So
all the way back.
Is that a dog that's joining the podcast?
Yes, that's Elvis's dog.
That is my dog.
One of 20.
I don't have 20.
That's awesome.
I don't know.
That's awesome. So I got into the industry in 1998. I think I was about 7 years old. The child labor laws were much different back then. You remember,
plus you were way out there in Washington State. I mean, who knows what goes on out there?
Do anything out there.
You'd be playing on the playground in elementary school and the van would cruise by and they would just grab you. You're driving a delivery car, but no, I was, in 1998, I was in my early 20s. I'll date myself. I'll go ahead. Proudly stamp myself. But Yeah, just, I was doing, I'd always had like, some type of an entrepreneurial streak. And actually I had a job where I was installing like custom home audio systems, and I was working for a great local, it was like an AV shop. They're still around too, but I was like, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 50. I want a career, and I want to have the opportunity to kind of have my destiny in my own hands, right? And make whatever I can of life, And,
Yeah.
and so my brother at the time, my older brother, was at Northwestern working on getting his dental degree.
Oh.
He since, after Northwestern, he decided that being a dentist wasn't hard enough or challenging enough for him. So he decided to become a prosthodontist. He joined the Air Force and did a pros residency in the Air Force. And now he has he's been in private practice for a while, and we got to work together. I'll get there in a minute, but I'm jumping ahead. But anyway, yeah. So 98,
sure.
My brother was at Northwestern, and I was chatting with him, and, I've always looked up to him, and, it's kind of, he's mentored me in life, right? He's 5 or 6 years older. And so I was just kind of telling him how I was feeling. He goes, you're so good with your hands, and you do have that entrepreneurial streak. Have you considered being a dental lab technician? And I just said, I don't even know what that is. What are you talking about? And, I flew out and spent some time with him in Chicago, and he was showing me, what waxing and, just kind of the processes of creating crowns. And it was so cool. And so I just decided, yeah, I think I want to try this. And so I actually was really hell bent on getting a degree. And out here we have Bates Technical College, which is a great.
Oh yeah.
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 Now it's run by a friend of mine, Bob Hayes, is the fixed instructor there. But anyway, so I went to Bates, took the aptitude test, and you get on a waiting list. I'm not sure how it is now. It's probably the same. I haven't looked into it, but at the time, they would let a new student into the class as somebody graduated from the class, and they only have so much room in there. And so I got on the waiting list. It was going to be a 3-4 month waiting list. And I talked to my dentist at like a checkup at the time. And I said, hey, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be, quitting my job, and I'm going to be going to Bates Technical College, and I'm going to be a dental lab technician. And I would love to be like an intern at a lab to, really expedite my schooling. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And, who's your lab? And he told me the name of the lab. And I have a great relationship with those guys still. I don't know if they, want to be blasted out. So I'll just say that, they were a great local lab. At the time, it was a 4-person boutique lab here in Olympia, Washington. And so I went and met the owner, and we hit it off, and just kind of said, okay, nice to meet you. And he's kind of just gave me a tour. And I was still on the waiting list. I didn't know when I would be going to Bates, and went back to my day job, and a couple of weeks later, he called me. We had exchanged numbers, and he called me and said, hey, my pickup and delivery driver and model room person just quit on me with hardly any notice. Like, that still never happens, right?
Yeah.
And he said, I got to fill the position, and I know that you're set on going to school, but I'll offer you an entry-level job. And he explained that often when you graduate or you complete like a 2-year technical program, you still have to kind of be retrained or trained anyway, right? When you join the lab. And we know that's the case today. Yeah. So I had a dilemma at that point. I was like, well, do I just pass on this opportunity and continue on and end up going to school? And I slept on it for, a day or two, probably one night. And I just woke up, and the next morning and said, I'm going to do this. And so I called him and said, I'll take that job. I gave my current employer 2 weeks notice, and, walked in there first day, and 4 people and me. I was the 5th employee. And so just started as a pickup delivery driver and model room technician. And, we were not doing, at the time, we didn't even have a computer in the lab. I was entering the cases in a 8.5 by 11 notebook.
I remember that.
Yeah. It's so crazy to think about, but I would log the cases in, patient name, doctor name, due date, whatever the case was. And
how would you deliver cases without GPS? How does that even work?
Isn't that crazy? Back then I could navigate the small town, and now I need GPS to navigate my small town now, but
I need GPS just to get home.
Yeah. It was a different time, and I have such fond memories of those days. Like, I'll tell you, like, the 90s and like the early 2000s in the dental lab for me were just a magical time, because I had, it was still very much analog. It was all analog, and so everything you learned, you had to just apply so much of so much time to learn and to perfect. And so the owner really mentored me. It was a high quality boutique lab, like I said, a small lab. And so, yeah, just pick up, delivery, model room. And then as things always usually go in the lab, if you work hard and you show that you have some aptitude, you'll get offered other opportunities. And so soon they said, hey, let's show you waxing and metal finishing. And then it was, let's show you opaquing and stacking porcelain. And before you knew it, I was a ceramist. And we had hired, people to backfill my other positions in the lab and started to kind of grow a little bit. And so, yeah, I at that time, I was so happy at the bench. I think maybe a lot of listeners can relate to this. And there's nothing wrong with and I'll tell you, there's nothing wrong at all with having a career where you're at the bench as a ceramist. It's so fulfilling and so rewarding. And but I think interesting as a dental lab tech because a lot of us are introverted by nature. A lot of lab techs, they want to come in and they just want to kind of have their headphones in and they just want to do their work. And I had the ability to communicate with dentists, and I liked the communication aspect of sharing the workflows and answering, questions for dentists. And I think the owner of the lab recognized that in me and saw, okay, this kid, not only does he have the hands and he's a decent technician, but he can also communicate. And so just in my ceramic career, and, he tapped me on the shoulder one day. And at this point, the lab had grown to probably 10 people. He said, hey, I need a general manager. And I would like you to be general manager, and I think probably others can relate to this as well. So I have no management experience. I'm a decent technician. I'm a good communicator. I'm a hard worker. I think those are the things he saw, but I was not, had no management training. And at the time I was not fit to be a manager. But I said, hey, I really just like being a ceramist. I just want to do this, and I want to continue doing what I'm doing now. And he said, okay. And then about a month later, he came to me and said, you now are the general manager.
Oh my God. What
right?
a little bud, Jay.
So, grateful still to him to this day, to give me that opportunity. But I can look back on those early days and just cringe because it was such a difficult experience going from working with people who had been at the lab longer, who were more experienced than me. And now I'm their manager.
Oh, I had the same problem.
Me too, you guys.
It's unique.
Oh, it's so hard. Yep.
It's a struggle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no management training. And this is no fault of his either. I mean, nowadays, if I was back in a lab, running a lab, I'm a huge proponent and fan of getting your managers into some type of a management training course.
Yeah.
You do the personality test, you figure out, their strengths and weaknesses. And we just didn't know that back then. So made a lot of mistakes, and quite frankly, was probably an asshole a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
I was overwhelmed and but the lab was growing. And so fast forward.
Hold on real quick. What did you, on your way to fame in that whole thing, did you not go to school or were you doing that and going to school, or you decided to just do that?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Barb. Sorry, I should have said. So when I decided to accept the, kind of starting position there, the entry-level position with that lab, I bounced off the waiting list at Bates. So because I didn't want to remain on the waiting list and take up a spot for somebody else that wanted to get into the program. I thought that would be not a great way to go. So so it was totally like cut the tether and jump, and so, I wasn't going to school. I was just being mentored and taught by the other employees at the lab, the other technicians.
Sure.
Just hands-on.
That's how I was taught. Yep.
Yeah, just hours and hours of waxing, have them check my margins, metal finishing. Everything was checked. We had microscopes at the lab. And so I'm also really fortunate that even in the model room at that lab, there was a microscope. And so not everybody gets that opportunity to start at a lab that focuses on that kind of quality. So it set a high bar for me, high standard for marginal integrity and for, everything else that we did. So, and so as we grew, I started to realize, I think that entrepreneurial streak that I have just really started to grow stronger in me. And I started to realize that although I loved being at the bench and I was growing into being a manager, although like I'm admittedly not always great, but not all bad either,
So let me see. Decent ceramist, decent manager. I'm getting a theme here. Yeah.
Be humble. I'm trying to be humble, Elvis. but I think it was I'm pretty proud of a lot of the work that I did. I think I was a decent to pretty fairly good ceramist. And so, I was like, I really am, realized I was turned on by like the growth and development of the business. And about that time, some technology started creeping into the industry. Like Nobel had, what was the earliest? No, was it the Piccolo? The very early.
Piccolo, the Forte.
Yeah.
There's a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were always really technology forward at the lab, like willing to invest in technology and try it. And I'm also fortunate that I was exposed to that early on. And so, we started playing around with some of the early technology, and then we started, it was the very, very early days of zirconia. And before zirconia, it was the Nobel Procera.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, remember that, Barb? So
I do.
Yeah, so we started, scanning with that scanner, sending in. I think Nobel would mill the Procera and send it back to us, and we would, finish up the crowns. And so we started experimenting with CAD/CAM for fixed. And I should say at the time, when I started at the lab, we were only a fixed lab. We weren't full service.
Okay, yeah.
So, started experimenting with technology, and eventually got to the point where we were doing enough of, I think we were outsourcing. Zirconia came along. So we started outsourcing zirconia crowns. We would do the design and somebody else would mill it and send it to us. We would finish it. And like a lot of labs, we got to the point where like, okay, we're looking at our spreadsheets and we're going, hey, with the amount of money we're spending and paying for these zirconia crowns, we could probably buy a mill. So we actually decided, we're not just going to buy any mill. We're going to buy the lava mill. Do you guys remember the lava mill?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had so many people on this podcast talk about how expensive those things were.
God, they were.
How big they were.
Yeah. So I think it was about $350,000 all in.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. And it was the mill, which was an amazing mill. It was huge, super heavy, really a very accurate mill because of its weight. But you had to like go crawl underneath your lab and make sure that the floor was reinforced enough for the weight.
Same.
And and it came with its own scanner and it had proprietary design software. And so we started milling our own lava zirconia crowns, and it was very inefficient at the time. It was in its infancy, and you could mill one crown at a time. And then we all did high fives and backflips because they came out with a block that had you could mill 3 units at a time, or a 3-unit bridge.
Yeah,
those were just copings, weren't they?
Yeah.
Just copings.
Yep.
We would layer ceramic on top of them. And I started playing around with doing full zirconia crowns in that lava mill. And, the material just was not translucent enough. It was just not aesthetic enough, but I was trying, we were trying to do that. But, we got to the point there where we were doing all our production for our dentists with that mill. And then I said, that entrepreneurial streak kicked in, and it was like, hey, we should consider outsourcing this for other labs. And
good call.
Yeah, so we started getting into offering those crowns to other labs, and we started to get some lab customers that were buying zirconia crowns from us. And before you know it, we started looking at, and then at that point we're like, okay, this is a great system and stuff, but it does have its limitations. And there were other mills starting to hit the market. And I was looking at, Glidewell was starting to make some pretty big waves with Brux.
Yeah.
We decided, let's buy a mill from Mr. Glidewell. And so I bought a couple Bruxer mills, and that zirconia was actually a little more aesthetic. Mm-hmm. And we were able to move more into the full zirconia. So we were able to do layered zirconia, full zirconia. And that was kind of our foray into digital. So, the lab continued to grow, and I'll just go ahead and fast forward. So I eventually, moved from general manager to a role as chief operating officer, was at that lab for about almost exactly 20 years.
Wow.
And we had grown at that point to about a 65-person lab. We had 2 satellite locations that we were running successfely. And, it just got to a point where I'll say this as tactfully as I can.
Yeah, sure. Got it.
Part of the plan was had been to have ownership of that lab and grow into an ownership role. And things just didn't quite play out that way. I'll leave it at that. And
that happened to me too. Damn it.
And it is. I've met so many people and so many friends in the industry who are in different roles. People that we both all know, who have pulled me aside and shared their story as well. And I think it just happens sometimes, and there's many reasons for it. But so often in life, things happen the way that they're supposed to, even if at the time you think your world is ending, or it's not.
That's a really great point. Yeah, you're right.
Or not that your world is ending, but it's like
Yep.
the way that I thought this was going to go is not, and how do I now adjust to the reality that that's not going to happen, And so lemons out of lemonade, lemonade out of lemons, however you want to say it. So there was a few companies that along the way had expressed interest, said, hey, if you ever decide to make a change, we'd like to talk to you. And so, I had conversations with a few of those companies, and there was an interesting role at Carbon, and we had been a Carbon customer. We were a very early Carbon adopter. We were one of the first, probably 5 labs in the world to try a Carbon subscription. Yeah. It was, for me, the subscription, just like, and I can relate so much with labs today, that still think that, they'll say, I don't want a subscription. I want to own my hardware. And that was the life I lived. I mean, we had another printer at the time that we were a pretty early adopter of technology. And so we had another printer, and we were trying to print models with it. And we were even trying to print some crowns and, cast them. And it just wasn't, the technology at the time, everything, the hardware was limited, the software and the materials were very limited. And so when Carbon came out, well, it was very similar to when we decided to start, buying zirconia mills for ourselves. We were like a lot of labs are, we were purchasing our models, our printed models for iOS cases. Right. Mm-hmm. And got to the point where we're like, boy, we're spending a lot every month on these printed models. Right. I think we could have our own printer. And so we did buy a printer, but we struggled to produce accurate models. And so we're like, well, we want to do this, but we'll need something that's going to work better for us. And also labs can probably relate to this. I'm sure you guys can as well at some point in your career. When you outsource models, it can be a great business model, but it does have limitations. One of those is that you're waiting 2 to 5 days to get these models back. So, the zirconia crown is sitting there in a case pan, and you could finish it if you're not doing it modelless, but you're waiting for this
100%.
And so we started to see workflow inefficiencies. And so, at the time, it was way back in the day. A shout out to Brian Gainey. I had met Brian, and this is back when Brian was, running the dental division at Carbon. I had met Brian. He was at Align, and I was doing a lot of work in the DSO space. And at the time, Brian was in the special markets. I think he was running special markets for Align. And so we had forged a relationship back then. And when he joined Carbon, he was just reaching out to some of his dental lab contacts, and he said, hey, I'm with this company now. And he ran it all down for me. And I think I said something like, oh, this is crazy. This sounds crazy. I want to own my hardware. I don't want to subscribe to a printer. And the long and the short of it is, when I really was honest with myself about how I was purchasing my hardware, which I had to take a really hard look at it. I realized that I really didn't own my hardware, because we were buying our mills and equipment with capital equipment loans. And so those have a term of 2 to 3 years. You're paying interest. And I had to look at myself, in the mirror and say, hey, look, you don't own this hardware. The financing company owns this hardware until you pay it off. Right. And I was in this cycle that I didn't like. I was in this cycle where I noticed that I would buy this equipment. I would get a capital equipment loan. I would make payments, for a couple years. About the time I paid that equipment off, that machine was now past its useful life, right? It was
time to replace it.
Not work so well, or a new material would come out that wasn't compatible with the hardware. And so the company would say, hey, you can trade this in and we'll give you $7,000 credit, and you buy a new $60,000 thing, and I didn't like that cycle. So for us, Carbon, although it was a real leap of faith at the time, because we didn't know how accurate and how reliable the technology was, it really solved a lot of those problems for us. It ended that depreciation obsolescence cycle. It took a lot of labor off my technicians at the time, like they didn't have to calibrate, they didn't have to tinker with it. And what it really did for us is that even in the early days, those M1 printers, the first printers, they just ran and ran and ran. I mean, you could run them for 24 hours a day if you had the staff, and they would not break.
And that was unheard of back in those days.
It was.
Those printers, I can't tell you how many errors we got with those early generation dental printers. It shivers thinking about it.
That's right. And labs still face this today when they're moving products from analog to digital. There is a time where you're kind of 1 foot in the analog workflow and 1 foot in the digital. And as you fully commit and you move those products from analog to digital, you're moving people from analog to digital. Yep. when you move the people from analog to digital, they rely on that hardware. And if the hardware goes down unexpectedly, it's a workflow disruption that can be, pretty devastating sometimes. And so, early Carbon customer. And so when the time came to make a career change, it was really the company that I was in love with. And I'll tell you, I had gone there as an early Carbon customer. I'd gone to Carbon headquarters, and I still to this day haven't experienced, sometimes you like look at a sunset, or there's times in your life where you like experience this feeling and you can go back to that place. The first time I walked into Carbon, I just had never experienced, like, the air was just, it was like, there was like a buzz in the air. You could feel it. It was palpable. It was this, it's in Redwood City, California. So it's like Silicon Valley. And you walk in and it was this big open space. It still is. All these people, incredibly intelligent people. I mean, materials scientists, software and hardware engineers, just brilliant people. There's dogs running around, it's like people bring their dogs. And I walked in.
You got to go there.
Yeah.
And this is when I was chief operating officer of that lab. And I remember thinking to myself, like, it was so odd because I told you, and I swear, my plan was always to eventually be owner of that lab and take that lab to the biggest heights I could take that lab to. If it was a $20 million lab, I mean, I just had, these goals of just, hey, the sky's the limit, And so, but when I walked in there, this funny feeling crossed my mind where I was like, there's really not a role for me here. I mean, and there wasn't at the time. There really wasn't. The dental division was still very small, and there was like, only one or two people kind of in that department at the time doing applications support. But I remember thinking to myself, like, man, if there was ever an opportunity to work at this company, this would sure be cool. But I was like, I didn't know about remote work. I didn't know, I didn't have any idea how that would work. So I just was like, kind of pushed that thought out of my mind. And years later, it was just really one of those full circle moments in life where I was walking back in there for like my orientation, and you can imagine how that feeling felt, like, oh my God, like, I can't, what happened? How did this happen? Started out and really my role, I shared the role at the time, as all companies do, tons of change, org changes and just departmental changes. And, you need to change to, figure out different. Yeah. And so at the time I had me and my buddy, shout out Ian McFarlane, CDT, amazing guy, awesome technician. He and I shared the role, and we split up the responsibilities of senior manager of application support. And
what does that mean?
Yeah,
well, Elvis, I'm so glad you asked, because honestly, it's different at different 3D printer companies. So at Carbon, what it means is I'm on the Carbon sales organization officially on paper, but I'm not a commissioned, I do not get any commission. I'm not a commissioned salesperson. My salary is solely based on the success of our customers. And so what that means is anything our customers need, any obstacle they have, I tackle it and help them overcome it. So it could be technical training. It could be workflow management, these types of conversations, like how to move analog to digital. I spent 20 years in a lab moving from analog to digital production, and not only moving products, but people, and not only products and people, but dentists, moving dentists from analog to digital, So basically, to sum it up, it's like you can pay a consultant, a dental lab consultant, and there's some good ones out there, and some of them are my friends, but it's $1,000 to $3,000 a day. And that's basically what I do at Carbon. Is I'm like a dental lab consultant that comes with the subscription. I'm a benefit of the subscription. So anything the lab needs, from technical training, digging into, sometimes it doesn't even have to do with printing parts on our printer. It could be a lab one of our labs that wants to understand how to put together a DSO package or DSO plan. I'll meet with them and say, well, here's the ways that I tackled and had some success in the DSO space, and give them some strategies for that. So it's not always related to our printer. And then it's a lot of like clinical education as well, helping labs communicate the benefits and educate dentists and help them manage dental change. And so it's a lot of like consulting on dental change management as well. So, and it's a global role, which is really fun because I get to work with, our labs in Europe, and things are different there, but you learn, from that. So yeah, it's amazing. So my official title now is Senior Manager of Application Integration and Strategy.
What the hell does that mean?
Well, I kind
Just
of,
kidding.
well,
You just
were you
went
sleeping
over
when I
it.
did?
I know, I'm kidding.
So basically, it more accurately sums up, because back to your point, you asked me what application support means. And this is no knock on any other 3D printer company, but a lot of times, if you look at what an application support specialist is at another company, it could be the person that comes around and fixes your printer when it breaks.
Yeah.
Sure.
It could be the person that just teaches you how to use and set up your printer, or it could be some of the things that I've laid out. But what I can guarantee you is it's not what I do. It doesn't encompass everything, because at Carbon, we know that when our customers succeed, we grow and succeed right along with them. So what we really do is we focus on solving our customers' biggest, most daunting issues and challenges. And we tackle those along with them, shoulder to shoulder. And it could be with, a new hardware application that we launch, a software, a material that we validate, or it could be some of these consultative, strategic consultative plans that I've covered. But
you come free with with part of the package of having one Carbon printer.
Well,
someone could just call you at any time and say, "Hey, I need help."
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's absolutely. And we have an amazing internal customer support team. So we divide a lot of it up, but it starts with what does the customer need? And then we either do a team approach, or we will divide and conquer, or we'll carve it up, and one of us will tackle their specific need. But yeah, I'm included with the subscription, along with so much else that comes with it.
That's awesome.
That we talked about, the reliability, the uptime, proactive service, all that stuff. I'm a subscription benefit.
Has anyone abused you in your services?
Well, I mean, you'd have to define abuse,
Well, call you 4 times a day on every little thing about their business.
No, I would be happy if a lab had that many issues and that much trust in me to come to me 4 times a day. I would get on a more effective and efficient schedule, but first of all, then 4 times a day. But no, for the most part, you guys know, we all have so many friends in the industry. And I mean, labs are really pretty good at running their business and their workflow. And I'll tell you where I spend the majority of my time. It's not with helping them print stuff on our printers. It's these other things that we talked about. It's more strategy, and it's more business, strategic.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is like, we've got to get dentists to understand the benefits of some of these materials. And dentists, the mindset is, and for good reason, oftentimes it's very conservative. And, so it's like, we need to just, I think rising tide floats all boats. And, I'll put it this way. I tell labs this all the time, and we all know this, we've been talking about some of this today, but it's funny to think that a decade ago, Barb and I, we were spending a lot of time, or at our labs are spending a lot of time on analog processes, and it was PFMs and full gold crowns, right? And zirconia was,
sure.
We were trying to stain and glaze zirconia, and it wasn't very aesthetic, and it was inefficient to produce, and all these things. And now, what was it? One of the latest surveys I saw, it was like 80 to 85% in the US of all the restorations that are done daily are either full zirconia or some type of zirconia based restoration for fixed, and we just, so we take for granted on the fixed side of the industry that we have really transitioned to digital production in a big, big way. And dentists at one point were very reticent to try zirconia. I mean, I can't tell you the countless conversations, and Barb, Elvis, you probably too, but with dentists trying to convince them a decade ago that zirconia really was, I won't say it was, I'm an old school fixed CDT, so I'm not going to say that, it's superior, but it has a lot of benefits for workflow efficiency and for strength, and, over the more traditional products. And so many conversations trying to, educate dentists about that. And that's where we are.
We just had to convince them that it was okay.
Right.
I mean, that it's not going to be the end of the world.
We said it was a replacement at first for gold. I remember that.
Yeah.
That was how we sold it. Really, really bright, chalky gold.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that when I said a minute ago, I said for good reason, a lot of times dentists are reticent to change or slow to change. It's like, I tell labs this all the time, and anybody listening on I don't mind, it's like, I'm really big about, I'm a big proponent of sharing knowledge in our industry and being open. And at one point I was not. I mean, at one point when I was running that lab, I was so closed. I I didn't care what anybody else was doing at their labs. I didn't want anybody to know what we were doing. I was like, hey, this is our path. This is what we're doing. And when I started branching out into the industry, I started writing some articles and stuff back in the day and kind of playing around with sharing some workflow techniques and some processes. And it was really rewarding because the feedback I would get was people really appreciated it. Mm-hmm. And I realized that, and I have to credit Jim Glidewell as well, because back in the early day as a Glidewell customer, I would go to that lab and it was an open book. Like you could go talk to you could talk to any of his managers. They would open up their spreadsheets, show you their numbers. They would answer any question for you. There was no threat. They weren't threatened by sharing their knowledge. And that just impressed me so much. And it helped me to start opening up my mindset. And, I think now sharing knowledge, like what I was, referencing here, is that I think that the real effective techniques when you're thinking about managing dental change is, instead of this mindset of like, dentists they're so head in the sand, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And, if we look at it through their lens, I think it really helps us understand how to communicate with them and manage that change, right? Because if you're a dentist, most likely you've been burned before by trying a new product, right? It was supposed to be the best in the world, and you had a bunch of failures. You had to cut those crowns off, eat the chair time. And it's not only that, but then does the patient lose faith in you and confidence in you? And so trusting a new material, trusting a new workflow, it's gotta hit a bunch of marks, right? It's gotta hopefully improve lab clinic efficiency. It's got to lower chair time, and the efficacy has to be there, and it's got to improve the outcome for the patient. And so if we can communicate clearly those benefits, and that's where we are with digital dentures today, with the high impact digital denture 3D printed materials that are on the market.
Yeah.
You're hitting those marks, but the dentists just don't know yet. It's just kind of like back in the early days of zirconia. And so we're really seeing a shift on the removable side, I think now, like similar to what we did back in the day when we were moving to fixed.
So what's it like having a prosthodontist as a brother now? Like, what do you guys talk about, and how into all of this is he?
Yeah, so that's a great question. When we spend time together, we don't talk about dental stuff at all. We just talk about whatever stuff is going on in our lives or whatever. But we did work together for years. So he did use our lab. And it's so funny, like the very first case he sent us, he was pretty fresh out of the Air Force, and he had just opened his practice, or bought into a practice. And you guys will love this. So the first prescription I get from him, it's for a PFM. And I call him and I go, his name's Rob, and I go, hey Rob, I'm reading your prescription here and I want to clarify. So it looks like you're asking me, you want a PFM, right? He goes, yeah, it's like say it's a number 18, right? Just a standard A3. It's nothing crazy. So it looks like you want, a lingual metal collar PFM, but it looks like you want me to wax this coping, send you the coping, and you're going to check the coping. And then you're going to send it back to me, and I'm going to cast it, and I'm going to send it back to you, and you're going to check the casting.
What?
And then I'm going to opaque it. And so basically, he was fresh. We were both in the infancy of our careers at some point, some level, because having an in-house Air Force lab, that's how they do it. Like the lab is right there next to you, and you can see every step of the process. And they're completing crowns in, a few weeks, right? It's not 7 days or something. And so, and so to answer your question, Barb, in a kind of a funny way, but a way that is relatable, it's like his expectations of what the type of work you would get from a lab were just way out of line, with how a lab can produce a profitable crown, And so, it was great. I learned so much from him. Again, it was that's where I really learned my removable, because I was like I said, I'm a fixed CDT. My background was at a fixed lab. At some point we did become a full service lab. We started offering removable. We started a removable department and launched that and grew that over the years, which was great. And I learned a lot about removable from my brother, and still do, so. Did
you just start the removable department, or did you buy a removable lab?
Started the removable department.
That's tough, man. I couldn't imagine not knowing, just being like, let's buy a bunch of wax and a bunch of acrylic and some tube and off to the races.
I did something in between. So I had looked at buying a removable lab, but it was just acquisitions and mergers are, in my experience, the toughest business transactions to pull off. It's just really hard. Part of it was luck and timing. I found a really good removable technician who was an in-house. he was actually an in-house tech for a prosthodontist.
Mm-hmm.
And I had talked to him. He wanted to make a career change. He was really into technology, and he was kind of limited on the technology exposure that he could have in this in-office clinic. And so we met, and the timing wasn't just quite right. He wasn't ready to make a change. And then about a year later, he was. And so it was a leap of faith. It was hiring this person and then building the department around him. And it was a lot of trust. And both ways.
Yeah.
He had to trust us, and we trusted him. And and we ended up growing that department and being really successful. But yeah, again, these are a lot of the things I've learned over the 20 years that I was in that lab that I've now stuck in my treasure chest, and I open that chest and help our carbon customers, with all this kind of stuff. So yeah, fun times.
Yeah, that's insane to start your own removable department. You hear a lot of people buying a removable lab and just bring it in, but
that's the way I think. And I would have, I'm not saying that I thought I knew how to do it better or something. I think if the opportunity would have presented itself to buy a small removable lab and just incorporate it into our lab, that's the safer approach, because you already have a client base, you already have staff that's trained, you can just kind of get up and running right off the bat. But yeah, we just bought like the boil out tank, and I remember that the guy who we hired to run that department for us, I remember him sitting there with the Zon catalog, just circling the stuff that we would need to buy.
This, yeah.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, are a bunch of labs getting the carbon printers to go with the digital dentures now, just solely focused on that?
I think that for some labs, that is a motivator for them. For most labs, though, and what I encourage all our labs to do, or any lab, even if they don't have a carbon printer, I encourage them, you want to get the ROI out of that printer by producing every part that you can on it, as many parts as you can every day. So I'm a real proponent, and we are at Carbon, of labs, taking advantage of our portfolio of products and producing, as many digital products as they want to. So a mix of models, splints, surgical guides, some of the hybrid materials that are out there now for doing long-term provisionals and stuff, and dentures. But, Barb, I have seen recently a lab who are pretty large lab, actually.
Are you talking about my
lab? But a couple of those who really have decided, they've made the decision, the strategic decision, like, hey, we are going to transition from analog to digital dentures in a big way. We have to do this. And they've vetted the different systems out there, and they decided that, hey, we're going to go with carbon for whatever reasons, whatever criteria that they've.
Well, that's what we did. We're launching digital dentures, and we went fully loaded in, with the carbon printers. And that was kind of the madness behind my question. How many other labs are, just solely focused on, digital dentures? But I loved your answer. You can use it for so many things, not just that product.
Right. And I think that digital dentures are at a point now, we're kind of at that inflection point where, the LDP, Lucent Digital Print material specifically on carbon, has been available for 6 years. I mean,
has it really been 6 years? Wow.
Yeah. And I was so fortunate to join Carbon at the time that material was just getting launched. So I was a baby in my role at Carbon, and I was, I had the opportunity to jump right into launching the first high impact 3D printed digital denture that the world had ever seen, and the workflows for that. So learning a lot about how to transition and communicate those benefits and workflows and changes to doctors. But, that material has been out, like I said, for 6 years. And we're going to be, by the end of this year, just from carbon printers alone, we're going to have 1 million LDP parts produced just on carbon printers. So at this point, you're way past the guinea pig phase, and there will continue to be new materials that hit the market that are high impact dentures. We know this, but it's so amazing to me that we were able to, launch and jump into that, kind of plant our flag in partnership with Dentsply with LDP, because it has turned out and proven itself to be such a reliable and amazing product, So, yeah.
So let me see if I understand this. There's 1 million Lucitone digital printed on carbon dentures seeded out in the world.
So by the end of this year, so I'll be careful how I say this, right? But by the end, we're projecting that things could change, but we're projecting that by the end of fiscal year 24, there will be 1 million LDP parts produced on carbon printers. That could be bases, that could be try-ins, a mix of bases, try-ins, tooth arches, So it's hard to say like how many specific cases for patients.
Got it.
But
Yeah.
I would be safe to say, and I think it would be okay to assume that we're over 500,000, right? Somewhere between 500,000 and a million dentures in the mouth, and more. Look, I think it's also safe to say more. There's probably more, for high impact denture materials. LDP has, obviously blazed a path that's pretty impressive, and I think there's more of that material in the mouth for high impact. There's only a couple high, ISO high impact rated printable dentures on the market today, and that's obviously the industry, leader. So
yeah, the reason I clarify is I love the Lucitone digital denture, and I'm pushing it as much as I can. We do a ton of them at Derby, and I get these questions a lot clinically. How are they compared to regular dentures? Do they hold up? And I'm like, well, they're not that old, so we're still learning.
Yeah.
But if I can say that there's 500,000 out there,
yeah, well, there's more than that.
That says a lot.
Yeah, there's more than that, Elvis, honestly, because I'm talking just from carbon printers, from carbon customers, but that material obviously is available on a Sega as well. It will be available on other printers down the road. I mean, we know that. I mean, if I was Dentsply, I would try to validate on as many printers as I could. So it's a rising tide floats all boats philosophy, really, in the industry and for us. But yeah, it's safe to say that from carbon printers alone, in the 5.5 to 6 years it's been available on the market, it's easily safe to say there's over 500,000 LDP dentures in the mouth currently.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. That's a big number.
It is. It's a milestone, and I think it's testament to the fact that
they're working.
They are. And and what I love about what I do and what we're doing at Carbon is, like I said earlier, we just want to go shoulder to shoulder with our labs and tackle their biggest, most daunting challenges. And right now, as you guys know very well, I'm also very grateful and fortunate this year to serve as the chair of the NBC board, and Barb is on there with me. We're interconnected in many different ways, but Barb's on the executive committee as the fiscal officer for that board. And
that was my next question. You totally
were getting to it.
Well, love it. Yes.
where I'm going with that is we have the opportunity to see the industry from like 1,000-foot view and the challenges and trends and stats. And we know that the number one challenge that I continually see labs face today is staffing. It's people. It's finding people, hiring people, retaining those people, training those people. And so at Carbon, we are keenly focused on not reducing the number of humans in the lab, but reducing the amount of labor needed by those humans so that you can utilize them in many different ways, right? I mean,
100%. Yeah.
We're not saying you can go in the back room and high five and here's the 10 people we can cut today. It's like, high five because here's the 10 people that we can reallocate to do so many different things in our lab, because we don't need somebody to remove parts from the printer, or we can reduce the number of hours that they spend nesting parts, or, all these types of things. Or they have an amazing 30-year removable CDT at the bench, and they know he or she is going to retire in the next couple of years. Let's capture their knowledge and transition it to the digital workflow so we don't lose knowledge for our lab. That's what I love about transitioning.
Love that.
So what's going on at the NBC?
Yeah.
Since you're the chair, what all y'all working on? I know the digital CDT. Am I saying this right? Yeah. The digital CDT diploma, whatever it's called, certification.
Come on, Elvis.
That's the word I was looking for. Sorry. The digital certification is going strong. I mean, we heard Denise in Florida was talking about how many people have taken the test.
Yeah. We have over 25 digital CDTs already and growing. We have, dozens on the list or in the process to become a digital CDT. And you asked really what's going on at the NBC.
Yeah. What's happening?
Well, so, and Barb, jump in, but what I see where we're really focused right now is making sure that we're accurately representing what's happening in the industry. And I will say that I think that everybody who's been served on the NBC board before Barbara and I has done an amazing job and has put their heart and soul into it. But things are moving so fast now from analog to digital that we want to make sure that if there's a test, a certification, that it represents both in the workflow and the testing protocols, and also the way that you can take that test. It represents the technology that's available today. So, transitioning to remote testing has really been something that's been it's lifted a huge barrier because you
Sure.
no longer have to travel. Back in the day, I mean,
Oh
I was
yeah.
fortunate enough. Some CDTs, a lot of people had to travel to other states on their own dime. They had to jump on a plane and go travel and pack up all their stuff and take it to the lab. And now you can take the certifications remotely from your lab, which is so much more efficient. And so that's one aspect of it, how we're using technology. And then making sure that we go through all the exams for all the different certifications and make sure that they're representative of the workflows that are actually happening in labs today. So there's a lot of digital processes, and we want to make sure that those are represented. And then specifically with the digital workflow specialist, we realized that, hey, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of humans every day in this industry that go to work in labs in digital roles. And there's no way for them to achieve a certification. There's no way for them to substantiate their knowledge base.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really a few years ago, we started looking at a way to say, we need to be able to recognize and actually set a bar and set a standard for these protocols in this lab. Like, what do these people do in these digital roles? What are they responsible for? What's their knowledge base? And how do we set a bar that allows them to achieve a way to substantiate it, but also for the industry to say, hey, here's how we recognize a certain level of knowledge in this digital
Mm-hmm.
realm. So
Yep.
It's pretty important. And we knew that when we launched it, nothing is ever perfect right out of the gate. So we look at this as this is going to be evolving and changing, just like the individual certifications are. This digital workflow specialist, this digital workflow CDT will be evolving with time. How it looks today, in a couple of years, it could look different, but so in other words, we hope to incorporate more removable products and workflows into it. We made the decision right now that because the majority of if you look at the majority of dentures that are done in the industry today, it's like only 3 to 5% are digital. That's going to change rapidly. So in a few years, I think it'll be necessary to have some more removable incorporated into the workflow certification. But Barb, did I miss anything? I mean, what else is going on in the NBC?
Not at all. I just think sometimes people forget that the NBC is actually their peers. It's like you, it's I, it's Elvis, and that we're the ones that are updating these exams and creating these exams and making sure they're accurate. And there's a lot of work that goes into launching things like the digital exams that I just think is missing. People need to know. It's a lot of work. You've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of work. Like it's exhausting, but it's important and it's gratifying. I love it.
It is. And, when you look around at our board, we're all volunteers. We all allocate and carve out times from our lives, our personal lives or our day jobs to spend time on the board. And I think if you're on the outside looking in, I would encourage, especially if you're like, what are they doing? Why are they making this decision or that decision? Or they're, I highly I can't encourage enough people to get involved. And you can join the board. I mean, we have open board positions every year. We have people that are terming off the board. And it's so important, I think, now more than ever, if you love our industry and you would like to be part of affecting, the change in our industry or give back. For me, when I was invited to be on the board, it was really, I looked at it as an opportunity to give back.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this industry has really provided me with an amazing lifestyle and friends, just an amazing life this industry has provided me. And I think I'm just so grateful for that I just giving knowledge back and giving my time back to help the industry overall and to help individuals in the industry is just, it's really important and it's really rewarding. So I highly encourage anybody who wants to become involved or who has thought about it, just
now's the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Barb and I are not that hard to find. You can ask us, reach out to us directly and we'll help get you in touch with the right people. And again, I'll say, especially if you're frustrated with the direction of the industry or you think those of us on the board are making bad decisions, like, hey, come and join the board and help. Help us, help out, but hopefully that answered your question, Elvis.
Well, it's important to remember that I'm not going to say it's easy to get on the board, but it's not hard. Everybody is eligible and they're looking for everybody from every different walks of our industry.
That's right.
So you don't have to be from a huge lab. we have people on the board that are by themselves or in a smaller lab. We do have them from large labs. So we get that perspective from everybody. And that's what's cool about it. And I remember when I first got on the NADL board, I thought I didn't have a shot in hell of getting on it. But sure enough, they were dumb enough to pick me.
You charmed your way right onto the board, and it's a good point. And Elvis, what you're saying and kind of not quite saying too is there's the NBC board, right? That kind of oversees certification and testing. There's the NADL board. There's the foundation. And then there's subcommittees too. And so there's ways that you can become involved, and get to know kind of the process and some of the people, and by just being on a committee versus a full commitment of a board, right?
Sure. Yeah. That's how I started.
Yeah. And it's a good way to kind of get your feet wet and get exposed to the processes and see where you want to take it.
So all three of us were advocating to give back and give your time, and you will not look back. It's so gratifying. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was touching on earlier is, we can get so laser focused on running our businesses. And I think we should be laser focused on running our businesses. But when we expose ourselves, to other ideas and other, processes, and just when you give your knowledge back, and then there's like this free flowing exchange of knowledge and information. I've learned so much from so many in the industry that helped me in my career, either with my business or even now, helping me in my role now. And I feel like it's really rewarding to be able to give people ideas. And sometimes you have a conversation with somebody and they're stuck, and then you give them that spark of an idea and you help them overcome that obstacle. It's just really rewarding. And you can't do that if you are so tunnel visioned and just, if you're only kind of focused on your
100%
business,
well said.
So,
Yeah.
Well, Jamie, thank you so much. That hour blew by.
Yes.
What a great story.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we finally got to have you on this podcast, and I don't have to disappoint you anymore with any more rescheduling. But thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't have to disappoint you with any more rescheduling. You know what? No, thank you guys. It's like I said, I mean, I'm humbled and grateful that you wanted to invite me onto the podcast and these types of conversations. Look, we all in this industry, we have so much in common. There's just there's so many common threads that we share. And I think that I love what you guys are doing, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing this. It's amazing. And I'm happy to jump on any other time and have a conversation with you guys. It's been awesome. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
From what I gather, since Derby has quite a few carbons, you can come out and run some deliveries for us if we need some.
Yeah, I think I'd be, even with the GPS tracking and the monitoring of the cars and routes, I think I'd be an even better delivery driver than I was back.
Nice. We're going to utilize that service. Jamie, thank you so much, man.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, we'll see you at the next meeting.
We'll see you soon.
A huge thanks to Jamie Stover. You're such a great guy, for coming on our podcast and telling all about your journey. I think a whole lot of people can relate to the starting at the bottom and even being thrown into management, myself included. Mm-hmm. The thing I learned the most is always be looking to grow, both personally and professionally, but also to make sure to give back. We thank you, honestly, for all your time and energy that you have put back into the industry with your time with the NBC and just being an advocate for everybody. So if you have a carbon printer, go use and abuse all that Jamie has to offer. If you don't have a carbon printer, go get one so you can use and abuse everything Jamie has to offer. That's awesome.
Jamie, thank you so much, and we'll sure see you at the next show.
Well done with the NBC.
Yeah, doing good things. All right, everybody. Barb wants to go for a run in the most beautiful part of the country available.
You know
I'm
it.
waiting for it to stop raining. We will talk to you next week.
Have a good one.
Bye.
See ya.
It's not early. It's 10:30, man.
It's 7 here.
Oh, look at you up and at 'em. The views and opinions expressed on the Voices from the Bench podcast are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the host or Voices from the Bench, LLC.